Good evening, everybody. Hi, I'm Allison Tate, and I am a director of college counseling at a small private school in Central Florida, and also an independent educational consultant for students all over the place. And I am speaking tonight for Grown and Flown about a very popular topic, and one that is, a little tricky to communicate. So I hope that you all will ask a lot of questions about course scheduling, which is a hot topic this time of year because a lot of schools have started the process of asking students what they want to take for next year. And this is something where, I think that it's important to be thoughtful about your choices and somewhat strategic. I don't really like that word, but thoughtful. We're going to go with thoughtful. So I have some points to make. There is a lot that I could talk about on this subject. I'm going to make some points, but I do want to first make the point that um, kids are not there is no blanket general rule or advice that I can give every single student about what they should take in high school. So when I say things, I want everyone to take it as a consideration, but not as a directive. I find that sometimes parents and students will hear me say something and they'll say it's a rule or it's a requirement. There are very few rules or requirements other than things that are actually in state laws or requirements for graduation or things like that. And when I say things, they are suggestions and they are advice. We're not, there's no formula for getting into college. I wish there was. It would make my life a lot easier. But there is no formula. And there is just advice and suggestions and things to take into consideration, but then you have to look at your individual life and student and remember that we're not raising college applicants, we are raising people. So their mental health always comes first. So please keep that in mind. I will probably remind you several times while I'm going through this, just because giving this advice makes me a little nervous because it's there, you have to keep mental health in mind. Okay. So, um, things that I like to keep in mind for course scheduling when we're approaching the idea of picking your schedule for classes. And this goes for freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. When you're looking at each course year, one of the things you want to think about in terms of like from the college admissions standpoint is that college admissions officers are looking at a transcript. They don't care about what the weighted GPA is at the end of the day. Most of them, some of them use a weighted GPA from your high school. Most of them do not. They're looking at your individual classes and grades. And then, parents like to tell me all the time, well, they have a weighted GPA of this. And I say that means nothing to me. What matters to me is the actual unweighted GPA because that tells me more about the actual grades that your child has made in that class and the classes that they took. So when you're thinking about a transcript or thinking about high school progression, you want to think about, does it make sense? Has the student challenged themselves appropriately, perhaps increasing the challenge a little bit as they grew older? And does this make sense? Like, have they regressed in some way, dropped things, skipped things? What about this transcript? It should be like stair steps in rigor, but also it should make sense. So that is one of my guiding principles is that, students will say, well, I taken AP Pre-Calc this year, and next year I'm going to take dual enrollment college algebra. That does not make sense because dual enrollment is an advanced course, and yes, it is a college class. In some places we call that dual credit. That's where a student is enrolled at both a college, usually a community college, sometimes a university, and the high school at the same time. They get credit for both. But college algebra is a precursor to pre-calculus. You're already beyond college algebra. So going backwards to college algebra doesn't make that much sense, even though it's an advanced course, if that makes sense. So that's an example of when I say, make it make sense. Like, look at the progress. Are we progressing? Are we mastering? Are we going forward? The other like foundational kind of guideline is that when possible, ideally, colleges would like to see students take all 5 core subject areas, all 4 years of high school. And the 5 core subject areas are English, math, science, social studies, and world language. And a lot of parents are surprised to hear me say world language because they believe, because their high schools classify it that way, that world language is an elective. That is not the way colleges see it. Colleges consider language a core subject area. So we've seen a trend where students take world language early on, sometimes in my home state of Florida, perhaps in middle school for high school credit, and then they drop their world language pretty quickly into high school. This isn't a great practice, both in terms of college admissions, but also in terms of preparation for college, because a lot of college majors and a lot of colleges and universities require world language study while the students are in college. So if you stop taking world language when you were in 10th grade, you're probably going to have to start over again in college. And as somebody who did it, tragically, back in the 90s, starting a language over again in college, not easy, not easy, not advisable. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. Did not go well for me. Cannot speak French at all. Did meet some cute boys. That is not the point of being in college, right? Right. So, my suggestion is that don't start language so early that your student is going to want to drop it really early in high school. And I know that in other areas of the country, there are areas of the country where world language early on is encouraged, like where I live. There are other areas of the country where students take world language all 4 years of high school, and it's just a given and a thing, and that's awesome. So, yeah, but if you live in an area where students tend to drop their language early on in high school, I encourage you not to do that. Because it does make them more competitive applicants if they have had world language, but also it prepares them for college better. And that's the other guideline that I would like to emphasize before I dive into it a little bit more, that just remember what we're doing here, because I find one of the biggest frustrations for me as the person who I literally build 200 high school schedules every summer. I build a schedule for every single high school student in my school. And then I also advise a lot of other students on their high school schedules. And one of the biggest frustrations for me is this, what I call like box checking syndrome, where we just want to get through high school as fast as we can, get through the requirements as fast as we can. Can we check off that box? Have we done that? Have we done that? Have we done that? What are we doing here, guys? Like, high school is not just a box checking exercise. Like, you're supposed to be learning things. And I get that that's not always possible for whatever reason. And I get that sometimes a class is going to be a box checker. Listen, summer PE right here. That's me. I am not PE girl. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not Miss Athleticism. So I definitely box checked PE. I get that. Definitely box checked health. Probably box checked physics. But I did take physics and I took it in person and I did learn something. Like, if I lean so far back in this chair, I am going to fall over, and that's physics. And I do feel like that's important. So try to remember, there's a lot of, can I just take it online? Can I just take it over the summer? Can I squish this class into the summer and then take something else or have a free period? I get why kids need free periods during the school year and why they're super tired and overrun, but try not to make school, like at least their core academic classes, a box checking exercise. Like, try to take their core academic classes in person if possible. Sometimes homeschoolers, it's not possible, and totally understandable, but in person and in a way that they're actually learning, because remember that at the end of the day, we are preparing them for college, and getting into college is not the end of the story. That is the first page of the book. And then they have to actually go to college and do the thing and survive classes. And as the mother of 2 college students, you want them to be able to have that foundation once they get to college. So we're not just trying to get into college, we're trying to prepare for college. And then we're trying to prepare for being educated humans in the world. So yeah. So that's some foundations. So let's go over what I already said. Number one, we want to challenge ourselves appropriately and make the transcript make sense. We want to progress, take things that make sense, and challenge the kids appropriately. That does not mean crush them. It just means challenge them appropriately for whatever that means for your child. Number two would be the 5 core subject areas for 4 years is ideal. That's not always going to happen, and we will talk about that a little bit more. But remember, core subject areas are important, and that world language is a core subject area. The next thing would be to remember what we're doing here, which is preparing for college and also preparing for life, not just getting into college. And then I'd say the last thing of the 5 like foundational guidelines would be you have to do more than the bare minimum. A lot of times parents will reach out to me and say, well, she's already fulfilled her graduation requirements in that subject area, or she's not going to major in a STEM subject, so she doesn't need to take science her senior year or something like that. And those are the same parents that are really upset the following year if their child is not getting into the colleges that they hope they would. They say we have to do more than the minimum. Like you have to, you have to prepare more than the minimum. We're not just trying to graduate high school, we're trying to go to college. So, and some people are trying to just graduate high school, and that's absolutely valid too. But if you're here and you're listening to this, you're probably preparing for college. So that's why my advice comes from there. Okay, so I'm going to go over a few general things with scheduling, and then I'm going to get to your questions. And I do see that questions are rolling in, and I will answer them, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to tackle some general stuff first. So in general, like I said before, we want to look at the 5 core subject areas: math, English, science, social studies, world language. What happens if for some reason your student needs to drop one of those subject areas for a year? Either it's really important to them to double up on science, it's really important to them to double up on social studies, world language just isn't working out. In that case, if you are going to drop a core subject area, the advice would be to replace it with another academic class. So you don't want to drop world language and then take underwater basket weaving or a free period in its place. Like just drop it and not have anything. If you're going to drop a core subject area, you want to replace it with an academic elective or doubling up on one of the other subjects. Ideally, it's not always going to work out, and for some kids that's not going to be possible, but that would be the ideal answer to that problem. So, and again, I'm going to remind you, I am giving guidelines and some general thoughts, but your mileage may vary, as we say, and your individual student might have circumstances that you would make a different choice, and that's also okay. Does it matter if your student isn't going to be a STEM major? Maybe you think they don't need physics, they're not going to be a STEM major. Every student preparing should ideally try to take the 3 core sciences: biology, chemistry, physics. Physics tends to be a scary word for whatever reason. Like kids get really scared about, I don't know why, they don't get that scared about chemistry, but they get really daunted by the word physics. Most physics classes, especially intro classes, are algebra based. So by the time a student is taking physics, they should have taken algebra, and they have the math required. Listen, I'm not a STEM girl. I'm an English major. I still took physics. And I think that we've gotten away from believing that we need a general foundation. But when I talk to colleges, and directors of admission, they tell me that their faculty is saying to them, we would really like students to have had classes like physics in high school, because not because they expect them to be STEM majors, not because they expect them all to be engineers or to be performing physics on a daily basis, but because they find that a lot like music and world language, it helps develop your brain and helps prepare you for higher learning. So even if you never touch a physics class again, which I certainly didn't in college. I never touched anything close to a physics class again after high school. It still prepares you for higher education and for advanced coursework. And so faculty are making that recommendation to admissions offices. And so admissions offices are taking that into consideration when they're looking at a transcript. And they would just really like to see the three core sciences. Now, if your student is like, I don't want to take AP Physics 1, which is an introductory physics class, by the way. AP Physics 1 was developed by the College Board to be the first physics class a student could take if they want to. That is okay. Honors Physics is also an introductory class. So I would just say some physics, any physics is better than no physics. And I tell students, if you don't want to take AP Physics 1, I'm okay with you taking honors physics. Like, you don't have to take all AP classes, that kind of thing. If you're in the IB program, then you can take like IB Physics SL, or you can take an honors physics class instead of as part of your IB program. But some IB classes in some IB programs, they emphasize 2 years of biology or 2 years of chemistry, and it's hard to fit physics in. And in that case, I would say that an IB program is really rigorous on its own and has different expectations. But if you are applying to a highly selective school with a very, very low acceptance rate, like an Ivy or one of the NESCACs, you'd still want to try and fit physics in. And that's hard advice for me to give because I hate to overload kids or make them do like even more than what they're doing. But at the same time, if you're talking about the most selective schools in the country, I mean, they're going to expect you to do hard things in high school. So, yeah, yes. So that would be my advice there with the sciences, is that you want to try and hit the three core sciences. For world language, one of the things to think about, ASL, we've had an increasing amount of students taking American Sign Language. It has become much more accepted by universities. So I would say the majority of universities will accept ASL or American Sign Language as your world language. But if that is the choice you're making, you might want to reach out or like look it up at a few of the colleges that you're aiming for and just make sure. Some of those colleges, by the way, might not have ASL offered as their language requirement. Like once you got to that college, you wouldn't be able to continue ASL for a graduation requirement if they require world language. So you might have to take a different world language. And that is a different consideration. But for admission purposes, most schools, I actually don't know any off the top of my head that won't accept ASL, but I do know that there are going to be colleges that won't offer ASL once you get there. So that's something to consider. My son took ASL in high school and had to take a different language. He's at Furman. They didn't offer ASL for graduation purposes at Furman. He took Japanese, and it went really well, and then it went not so well. But like, we got through it. We're fine. But and he enjoyed it. But yeah. So just a warning out there that once you get to college, you might have to start over if you take a ASL. I hear like literally every year, I think at least 50%, well, it might be split three ways between people saying my child doesn't want to take physics, my child doesn't want to take calculus, or my child doesn't want to take any more world language. Those are the three big questions that I get every year from parents, and they want to know, is that okay? And the answer is, of course, it depends. But when it comes to world language, I know that we have a really big problem having great language teachers in high schools. I'm sure there are amazing ones out there. I know my school has an amazing Spanish teacher. She's really, really good. And we're very lucky that way. But A lot of schools have a hard time keeping great language teachers, and a lot of the kids will say, like, I don't enjoy this and I don't want to keep doing it. I get that. And at the same time, if it's offered, then it'd be better if they could at least make it through 3 years of world language in high school, at least three. If they can make it through three, that would be awesome. If you're aiming for a highly selective school, they would like to see you get to AP level if you have AP at your school. And that's just, again, we're talking about the most selective schools in the country, and they're going to expect things that, other people might not. So there's that. Um, okay, let me think. Covered science, three core sciences, covered world language, ASL is acceptable. If you drop world language, I mean, 3 years would be awesome. If you drop it, replace it with a different academic class. And just know that, it's a slight disadvantage to not keep continuing in your progression in world language, but we're not going for perfection. We're going for like best you can do. Um, in English, um, I don't think there's a lot of different questions in English. English is pretty straightforward for the most part. I do know we have a question about AP Seminar, and I'm going to go ahead and answer that one right now because it's becoming an increasingly bigger phenomenon that high schools are making AP Seminar classes their core English classes. And so somebody asked, is it okay to take AP Seminar as their core English class for 10th grade? The answer is not so easy on that. I will tell you this, I'm an AP coordinator. So um, I know a lot about the AP classes and the way that the colleges look at them. They do not consider seminar an English class. And for instance, at my high school, it's taught by a social studies teacher. So it is not developed to be an English class. It is not inherently an English class. However, if your high school only offers, like that is the highest level of English class for 10th graders, um, then I would say you could take it, but I would want to check your school profile and make sure that it is outlined in your school profile that that is the highest level English class for 10th graders, and that in the curriculum for that class, there are these standards that are met as an English class, because they don't actually have like English curriculum standards in the AP seminar class. So my other question would be for the person who asked, like, is it okay to take AP seminar as their core English class? Is there any other way to take AP seminar? Because if you can take it as an elective, I would take an English class and then take it as an elective. And that would be actually much more ideal to me because it is an elective in terms of college. Seminar only earns you an elective credit if you pass the exam, and that's only at schools that offer that. So public state universities will usually give you an elective credit for it. Private colleges usually don't. So that's a long-winded answer for the seminar question, but basically it depends. And I'd also want to see how your school offers it and if they spell it out for colleges, like why they're making it an English class and how they're making it an English class. And if your school doesn't explain that, oops, sorry, that's Facebook talking. If your school doesn't explain that in their school profile, then you can explain it in the additional information section of your application, but it's just a little bit clunky. So yeah, so questions about AP Seminar. Also, to be clear, AP Seminar is a great class. It's an awesome class. It's a great class for preparing for college. So is AP Research. It's just an elective. So yeah, but a lot of high schools are starting to do that. So it's I'd say colleges work with what you give them. And if they see that that is the highest level of English class for 10th graders or 11th graders or whatever it is, and that it is an English class at your school, they'll take it as an English credit, but they're going to want to see like that you learned English in it. So, which isn't automatically true. Other than that, I'm not sure that there's a lot that's different about English. So, not if you have questions about English, let me know. Um, for social studies, so a lot of high schools only require 3 years of social studies, which again, when schools are evaluating your transcript, they are going to evaluate your transcript in terms of what was offered at your school and what the like culture is at your school. So your student's transcript is not being compared against the transcript from the school across town. They're looking at your school and what was offered at your school and how much you took advantage of the opportunities at your school. And I have parents ask me all the time, like, well, my school doesn't offer AP classes, so should I have my child switch schools? Should they go to a different school? Or should they go to an IB school? Or, is it a problem if they don't have these programs? And that is not a problem because you're being evaluated based on what's available at your school, not what is available at other schools. But I would say you want to look at what the options are for advanced coursework and for opportunities to challenge yourself at your school. So that's fine. And, some schools offer 28 AP classes and some schools offer 10 or 5. And you want to look at what's offered and challenge yourself that way. And by the way, if they offer 28, that does not mean that you need to take 28 AP classes ever. Like that's never, ever a good idea. But you want to pick the ones that you would thrive in and push yourself in those areas. But back to social studies. So AP Human Geography is a class that's offered in social studies. For things like IB, the curriculum is going to be pretty prescribed. For things like ACE or the Cambridge program, as it's known here in Florida, again, they're going to have certain ACE classes. In AP Human Geography is considered like a social studies class, but it's a social studies elective, but it's fine for kids to take. And then you want to make sure that you're hitting like core social studies classes. I would say those would include world history of some kind, some whatever is offered at your school that is world history, and then U.S. history, some form of U.S. history is good to take. I think people get confused because in the state of Florida, and I think in some other states, government and economics are required for high school graduation. But econ is at its heart an elective social studies. So you don't have to take econ for college admissions. It can be a good class. And I think that it's an important class. Like, Lord knows our children need to learn how the economics work. And desperately kind of. So I think it's a great idea and I think it's great on a transcript, but it's not always required. So if your student wants to take AP government and not AP economics, and it's not required for graduation to take economics, then that's okay. They don't have to take economics. You're not missing a core thing. I'd say government is a more core thing than economics. And again, our kids need to learn about government too. So when you're choosing those classes, I would say take the things that are interesting to them. One thing about economics, though, to remember, because I think this comes as a surprise to kids, is that economics is not easy. And I think that kids find it challenging because it's not like anything else they've ever taken. Like if they're taking government, they've kind of learned that there's a judicial branch and a legislative branch and an executive branch somewhere along the way, and they've hopefully taken civics in middle school and maybe even in high school. But economics is different. And so I find that the kids are a little surprised at the difficulty. And sometimes if they're like taking the class online or trying to get it done over the summer or something like that, they're like, why is this so hard? So just something to think about, I guess. I see a lot of questions rolling in and I am going to answer them, but I am first going to address math. So math is a big deal. And math is one of the most problematic areas in education right now because since COVID, our kids have struggled in math a lot. They also struggle in writing, but writing, I feel, is a little less quantifiable literally than math. And the colleges are seeing kids struggle in math quite a bit. So this is a big concern to them. And if that is concerning colleges, it has to concern us because you want to be able to show that you're prepared to do college level work. So what I'm seeing with kids across the country, not just here, but everywhere, there are pockets of this country where kids are being accelerated in math very early and without a lot of discernment. So there are many areas where kids are being put into seventh grade Algebra 1, which for some kids is the right path, but for a lot of kids is really early. And when kids start Algebra 1 in middle school, especially in seventh grade, two things happen. One, algebra is a developmental math, and their brains have to be ready for it, and they have like even very smart kids might not be ready for algebra in seventh grade. And one of the things that happens is that the kids start off with algebra in seventh grade, and then there's no good way to get off that train. So even if they don't super succeed and thrive in seventh grade, they're pushed into geometry in eighth grade, and then they're pushed into algebra 2 in ninth grade. And then suddenly they're like way in over their head because they never really did that well in seventh grade or eighth grade, and suddenly they're in high school and they're drowning. Um, Another thing that can happen is that they might do really well in seventh grade, they might do really well in eighth grade, they might even do well in ninth grade, and then suddenly they're staring at calculus, AP pre-calc for 10th grade, and then calculus in 11th grade, and it's just too much, and they are freaking out. And that is valid. These calculus is a college class, and 11th grade is early. So there are kids for which that is appropriate, and there are kids for which that is really wildly not appropriate. And so parents will say to me all the time, I didn't realize when we were put in advanced math in elementary school that we were basically being put on this path to, this fast train to calculus. And that's a problem. So I realize that for some of you, I'm talking about this and it's like too late. And maybe you have struggled, maybe your kid hasn't struggled. But it's just something to think about and to be aware of because it happens a lot. And if your kid is struggling now in these higher level math classes, it's not their fault. Like, or, it's not like they're not trying hard enough. Like there's a lot of things going into all of this. In any case, one of the side effects is that kids want to get off that train. And so they want to take statistics. And or they want to go dual enrollment and do college algebra instead, which is basically like a little half step up from algebra 2. I just hit myself in the glasses. Did you guys see that? So they've already taken algebra 2, but they want to take dual enrollment college algebra, which is basically like just the big brother of algebra 2. And they don't want to take calculus. Like they want to get off that track. The problem is that it's really hard to get through the rest of high school taking progressively harder math classes and getting where you need to be in math. And also, a word about dual enrollment or dual credit classes, they start your college GPA and they are college classes. So it's really important that students do well in those classes. If you take an AP class and you fail the AP exam, there's really no ramification whatsoever. Like even they're not going to like give you a bad grade, or if you get a 3 on the AP exam and you get a credit for it at college, like you don't get a worse grade than a 5. You just get credit for the class. There's no like impact on your college GPA. But dual enrollment classes and dual credit classes, that's your college GPA. So even if it's not affecting your particular university that you enroll in, your GPA for that university, it is your overall college GPA. And for college admissions purposes, a college grade means a lot. So you have to be really careful about what you pick to take. And if you have been accelerated in math and then you're taking college algebra as a way to like divert off the calculus track, make sure you're going to do well in college algebra because that's going to be a very important grade to have. And make sure that students have support in that. Also, don't think that you can just dual enroll and take some higher level math class because you've been accelerated in high school. Don't do that unless you know that you're going to do well in that class, because that grade, like for instance, in the state of Florida, if you get a D or an F in a dual enrollment class, it can have a serious impact on your admissions chances at our state universities, like very serious, even if you're a straight A student otherwise. So just be careful, like be thoughtful. I'm not saying don't take them, not saying don't take dual enrollment. Big fan of dual enrollment when it's appropriate. I'm saying be careful and realize that you might not always get the advising that you need in order to make good choices. So you have to advocate for that guidance. Um, when possible, the goal would be to stay on a track towards calculus. Um, that means algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and then some form of like trigonometry, pre-calculus, AP pre-calculus if you must, um, and then calculus of some description. It does not have to be AP calculus. It can be calculus honors. It can be plain calculus. Calculus is calculus, but staying on that track towards calculus would be the goal in high school. Statistics is an amazing class. AP statistics, super valuable. Any kind of statistics. Again, our children need to learn economics. They need to learn government. They need to learn statistics. However, statistics in colleges is not even necessarily a math class. Like it's sometimes classified as a social science class. It's sometimes classified in a different department. It's not like a pure math. And statistics in high school is kind of like hitting a pause button and learning a different angle of math, but not progressing in math, if that makes sense. So I love it. I love statistics. And for students who absolutely need to get off the calculus pipeline, I think it's a great alternative. But I would say if you can stay on a pre-calculus track, stay on a pre-calculus track and consider statistics as a bonus class or an elective class. Certainly for selective colleges, you have to be on a calculus track. Like that's it. For instance, and for context, Florida State University here in Florida, they have I think this year it's going to be somewhere around a 23% acceptance rate overall, which is pretty intimidating. But over half of their incoming freshman class has taken calculus in high school, just to give you context as to how many kids are taking calculus in high school, or at least like some form of calculus in high school. That said, calculus is not appropriate for every single student. And I am the mother of a high school senior right now, and he has not reached calculus in high school. He is so smart and has so many gifts. Math is not one of them. He gets that from me. But I have made a point of keeping him on a pre-calculus track, even though that child is not taking calculus in college under any circumstances. But he's hit pre-calculus. And that's what was important, was that he got his algebra foundation and that he's got his pre-calculus foundation and that he's learned enough math that if he goes to college, which he is going to college, by the way, there's no question, he will be prepared to take college algebra or college trig if he has to, or statistics, because he will have the algebra for it. So that is the goal. Despite a lot of people saying that we shouldn't value calculus so much in college admissions, it is still valued in college admissions. And that's just the hard truth. So as much as I hate to push kids into math that they might not like or be prepared for, I also have to do my job and advise you. So my advice is pre-calculus track when possible. By the way, my high school senior who has not made it to calculus has been accepted to 17 universities. So he's doing fine. And he has been offered scholarship money at most of them. So it's possible. And it's not because he's got like stellar high profile. It's because he is well prepared for college because his mother built his schedule and made sure. So I just want to tell you, like, you don't have to be all of this to get into college. He would love it if he knew I was talking about him. Nobody is allowed to tell him. Okay. It's just a national platform. It's fine. It's fine. Okay, so I think that I covered most of this. And I think I can go ahead and start answering questions. And then if I think of anything I missed, I will go back to it. Okay. I'm going to start with the live questions, and then I'll go to the ones from earlier today. My son is leaning towards STEM, but really doesn't know what he wants to study in college. He's taken AP Calc AB and is now wondering if he should take AP Calc BC or if AP Stats would be a good option too. What a great question, because I just finished talking about that. So the answer is, as usual, it depends. Basically, if you've hit calculus, that's great. And if he's talking about wanting to go to a state university, then he probably can get away with going to AP Stats if that's what he wants to. However, if he wants to be in STEM, um, especially engineering, or if he's shooting for more selective schools, or he wants to be more competitive, then AP Calc BC would be the choice there, which I think a lot of kids are freaked out about because AB is pretty hard because it's different from anything they've ever done before, really. It's even way different than AP Pre-Calc. My advice to you to give to him is that, you know, it's called AB and BC because Calc 1 in college is split up into three sections, A, B, and C, right? So AB is the first two. BC is the second two. And so that B is a little redundant. So once you've taken AB, if you take BC the year afterwards, you're not going to get really new material for the first semester with most teachers. Teachers vary and the way they teach varies. But for a lot of my seniors, if they've already taken AB, BC is not it's not like a million times harder than AB. It's like an extension of AB, but it's not driving them into the ground. Like the AB part was harder than the BC part because they've already learned like a lot of it. That makes sense. So that might make him feel better. But again, AP Stats is a great class. It just kind of depends on your college goals. My son is looking at the University of British Columbia and was surprised by the minimum requirements for engineering, pre-calculus, AP chemistry, or 2 full years of chemistry, and AP physics 2 or C. Do you know of many other colleges that require 2 years of both chemistry and physics? So, yeah, colleges outside the United States usually do have very high standard. It's a difference in preparation for a lot. And at the Canadian universities, things are really, really based on transcript. So I'm not very surprised by that. I will tell you that AP Physics 2 is still an algebra-based physics, and it's not necessarily wildly harder than AP Physics 1. It's just kind of the extension of it, but still algebra-based. AP Physics C is physics with calculus, and that is it's pretty tough. There's also two different C classes. There's mechanics, and then there's electricity and magnetism. Um, so AP chemistry, yeah, that doesn't surprise me either. Yeah, I mean, are there are other colleges that would like to see it. Most American universities do not have those kinds of hard and fast requirements. You're going to find hard and fast requirements at Canadian universities and usually British universities. I would say that very selective schools in the United States are going to be looking for at least BC Calc for engineering. Very selective schools. Yeah. And I say at least, most kids don't make it to multivariable or beyond that, but BC Calc is where they want to see you hit for engineering. Yeah. And 2 years of both chemistry and physics. There are a lot of kids who take AP chemistry without taking chemistry honors. I'm not recommending it, but I'm saying it happens. Um, and in the IB world, 2 years of chemistry makes sense because if you're HLing it, like it's going to be 2 years of it. And then physics, yeah. I mean, what what the University of British Columbia is telling you is that that is what you're going to need to know in order to thrive in their programs. So if your son is not going to be able to do that at his high school, then what he needs to know is like he would get there and not be prepared. So, it's not a matter of like being good enough to go there. It's a matter of like, do you even want to go there if you're going to drown when you get there? Okay. How do admissions officers look at free period senior year versus a full schedule? So, as long as you're covering your core academic classes, and then I would say, you at least have a little bit more academically going on. One free period does not bother me a ton. By bothering me, I mean admissions officers, I find do not expect you to like crush it. But I will say that if they're looking at you and they have other students from your school applying there and the other students have full schedules, you know, they might take note of that. Um, you're not really being directly compared by private universities to your classmates, but I would just say, the more selective the school, the more they're going to want to see you maximize your opportunities, as they would probably put it. But if you're talking, again, it just depends on the colleges that you're talking about, because there are other colleges that would be totally fine with you having a free period senior year. And if it's going to help mental health, and if a student is going to use that free period in a way that is really, really going to help them, then I usually support a free period senior year. How do I find the course requirements for different majors at each college? Is there one central website, or do I have to go to each college's major website one by one? Yeah, you have to go to each college's major website one by one. I get a lot of questions about like central resources, like, y'all, we're lucky if these colleges update their own websites. Like, they certainly are not contributing to a central website. There's so much. So yes, my best advice is that you go to the website of the college itself. You look up that department, you make sure that you're on that major, and then usually sometimes they'll have like a sample schedule for a student, and they'll either tell you like the exact requirements that they have to do year by year, or they'll give you like, a math that might include this, this, or this, or social studies that might include this, this, or this. They'll give you the major requirements, but then they'll also give you like sample schedules or they call it like critical tracking for courses. Also, remember, like for things like psychology, sometimes there's a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Arts offered at the same university. A Bachelor of Science in psychology is going to have different different major requirements than a Bachelor of Arts. One is going to have more hard sciences and math, and the other one's not. So keep that in mind too. I do a lot of that with my students when they're writing applications and they're talking about the majors that they've declared or the academic areas of interest. And I find that the students usually have zero idea of what's going to be required of them. My son, who's a computer science major, I think had no idea how much math was going to be a major part of his life. And he complains all the time and says, even with the classes called like machine learning, it's just linear algebra. It's just linear algebra with like hiding behind a machine learning title. So, just when kids tell me, oh, I want to major in computer science, I say, okay, so you are prepared for math for all 4 years. And I mean like all the way through. Or when they talk about business, like, okay, so you're probably going to have to take business calc along with statistics. Or when they talk about psychology, I say, which kind of psychology? That kind of thing. So I think it's really good practice for you to sit down with your students and like go through departmental pages, especially at the universities that they're looking at. And it does vary a lot. So kids figure out a lot about when we talk about fit in other sessions, they find out a lot about fit by looking at those departmental websites. Okay. My daughter says she doesn't need physics because she's already taking other science classes like anatomy and physiology, honors bio, honors chem, and AP bio because she wants to be a bio major. Is that true? I told her she needs physics. Lisa, you are correct. Your daughter needs physics. So anatomy and physiology is an elective, and it's not an impressive class to take in high school. It's a hard class, but it doesn't move any meters from a college admission standpoint. And my friends who are doctors, and I have some parents of students that I work with who are actually involved in medical school admissions. And a lot of them have told me, I never took an anatomy class until like medical school, or like sometimes not even in undergrad. And yeah, so physics, much more important than anatomy, unfortunately. So yeah, she does. She needs physics. Our high school requires 2 years of Latin and 2 years of a modern world language. Does that count as 4 years, or do you mean up to level 4 and one foreign language? First of all, former Latin student, love Latin, think it's really important. So I love that they require Latin, but no, that's 2 years of two different languages. That's not 4 years of one language. And I'm talking about 4 years of one language. And it's 4 years of one language because you're trying to master the language. So you can do a lot in Latin in 2 years because it's a dead language and it's not moving and it's staying in one place and you can learn the rules. But yeah, but again, Mary, this is the kind of thing where context matters. And if that's what's required at your high school, then the colleges will take that into account, that your student had to take 2 years of Latin, and they probably aren't going to take 4 years of a single foreign language if they had to take 2 years of Latin first. So they'll take that into account. I would talk to your school counselor about that and see, like, how do colleges react to that? My son is trying to decide between AP Lang and dual enrollment English composition taught at the high school by a high school teacher. Any advice? So AP Lang is a difficult class. If you pass it with a 4 or a 5 on the AP exam, you get credit for not just ENC 1101 or that intro composition class. You also get credit for the second semester of intro English. So it actually covers more than an intro dual enrollment English class. I would prefer AP Lang, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. And again, it depends on your son's college goals, but I find that AP travels better outside the state if your son is looking at colleges outside of your state. AP's just colleges know what it is. They know what the standards are. We don't have to go into whether or not we think that AP is actually good or meaningful in any way, but they know what it is, and that's what matters, right? They don't necessarily know what your dual enrollment curriculum is. I do think it's great that it's taught by a high school teacher at your high school. I prefer that to like at a state college or a community college off campus, just because I feel like your high school teachers are more invested in your students and will make sure that they're not going to like completely flop. And they are going to be invested in them in a different way, relationship wise. So, I mean, students' arguments are that dual enrollment is a guaranteed college credit. Not every college takes dual enrollment credits from everywhere, but in state, it's going to be a guaranteed college credit. AP is not, but I would say AP is considered more rigorous generally. So, and the kids also know that. But what I would ask when making this decision about English, I would say ask these questions. What are the teachers involved? Like, do the teachers have any impact? Is one teacher really good, or is another teacher really bad, or is another teacher really hard? I don't like saying bad teachers, by the way. I love teachers, but you know, in the vernacular of the children, they'll be like, "Oh, they're so bad. I don't want that teacher. I need to take dual enrollment to avoid the AP Lang teacher." If it's going to make a big difference to your kid, like make the choice, like go for dual enrollment. If it works better with their schedule and that's the way that their schedule works out, like then do that. If your child is mostly applying to in-state schools, cool, like dual enrollment will work. Yeah, there's just questions to ask. Do colleges frown upon only getting up to pre-calculus in 12th grade and not taking calc at all? I think I covered that. It does depend on the college and it depends on the major, at some schools at least. But like I said, I've got a kid of my own who didn't do it, and he's done just fine. He's got plenty of choices. How important is it to take AP math classes if your child knows they want to major in an English field? Well, the AP math classes are AP Pre-Calc and Calculus. So those are pretty high-level math classes. I'm an English major, and I took AP Calculus. But I also went to Princeton, and I was aiming for Princeton. So again, you have to think about like, what are your goals? And if your goal is not an Ivy and not a Duke or a Vanderbilt or, you know, I don't know, Villanova's business program, which has a 12% acceptance rate or something crazy like that, then no, you probably don't need an AP math class. You can take honors calculus, you can take honors pre-calculus. Yeah, it kind of depends on your college goals. Okay, thoughts on the following progression in terms of number of AP classes. Okay, one thing, colleges do not add up your AP classes. Or if they do it with context in mind. So there's no like goal number of AP classes, but okay. Does the transcript make sense? So ninth grade, 1 AP. Okay. So I get a lot of questions about this. Like, do you need to take an increasing amount of AP classes every year? You do not, because again, you want to take the ones that make sense. And like English only has 2 AP classes and they're not until, you know, 11th and 12th grade, ostensibly. Some schools have you take them early or whatever. Um, eh, Calculus, pre-calculus, like those are super high level math classes. You're not taking an AP math class before that. So it's not about you don't actually have to have an increasing number. And if you have fewer one year than you did the year before, that's not necessarily indicative of you lessening your rigor. It just might be you targeting your rigor in a different way. So don't worry about that. It's not about numbers like that. It's more just about them making sense. So, yeah. Should parents be concerned with the amount of direct admits this year? Are schools just trying to build their own profiles? Christina, can you explain what you mean by direct admits? I don't know what a direct admit means. Are you talking about like direct admissions on a college application? Like when they just offer them admission? Tell me what you mean. My son took 9th grade STEAM Lit requirement in the STEAM Academy. 10th grade Honors World Lit, 11th Honors American Lit, and 11th AP Seminar. What should he take senior year? Honors Dramatic Writing, AP Lit, or dual enrollment English? So AP Lit is beyond, the AP Lit would probably be too far for your son based on what he's already taken. I would say dual enrollment English would probably be the best of those three choices because it would be kind of the AP Lang equivalent. AP Lit comes after AP Lang. So AP Lang, AP English Language is kind of the fundamentals of writing. Like you learn mechanical language, figurative language, rhetorical language. There's a lot of existentialism and like essay reading and analysis involved. AP Lit is more reading novels and analyzing them, basically with the tools you learned in AP Lang. So AP Lang tends to be harder than AP Lit, but I wouldn't take AP Lit without having a strong foundation. And if you took 11th Honors American Lit, then probably dual enrollment is the better option for you. Is it a waste of a schedule slot to do IB film studies or IB theater studies in junior year? No, that's an elective. I wouldn't take it in place of a core class, but those are great electives for kids who are interested in theater or film. Absolutely. We don't waste slots on electives. We want the kids to have some kind of joy in their lives, right? I'm kidding. I mean, yes, we do, but you know what I mean. Is there any school you recommend for ADHD and language processing? Okay, I assume you mean colleges. So is there any college I recommend for ADHD and language processing, right? There are colleges that have better support systems than others, but any college that you're considering for your student or your student is considering for themselves, you can always approach their office of student resources or student disabilities and ask them, or accommodations. They call them different things at different schools, but you can ask them what they offer in terms of support. So I have a child with ADHD and some processing speed issues. He's at Furman University, and I am the biggest like cheerleader for Furman. I think Furman is an undiscovered gem. Like it's such an awesome school. And one of the things that I think they do really well is they have a program called SOAR, SOAR, and it is basically their accommodations office. They have advisors that will meet with the students. My son can schedule any of his exams in a private room, just like online. He doesn't have to talk to anybody, which, as we all know, if you have especially teenage sons, is very important, not having to actually talk to anybody. They can actually do it online. And they have like all sorts of built-in services that are and support layers. And they're just a liberal arts university. It's not like they're a special needs university or anything like that. But I think, you know, even if you don't have special needs or the label of special needs, and by the way, I never had to provide any paperwork to prove that he had anything. They just offer it because, believe it or not, colleges want your kids to succeed. So they're cool with it. Did you see that? Like, I think my sweater just shed and the thing just flew across my face. So look for that. Lynn University in Boca Raton, Florida has an a la carte support layer that you can pay for on top of the usual private school prices. And it's really awesome. Like it's a very good support system. They've got a lot of supports in place, but for every student who goes there, they have some great features. They have a block schedule. So the kids take 1 or 2 classes at a time, and that's it. and they take them for 4 to 6 weeks at a time, and then they change. So they take the same number of classes as at a normal university, but they're only answering to one or two professors at a time, which is really awesome for anybody with focus issues. They also issue every student an Apple iPad when you enroll, and an Apple Pencil, and they preload their textbooks onto the iPads, and they have built-in apps like the Glean app, which is great for ADHD or dyslexia, that highlights words for the kids and pulls it and makes it easier for them to read. The books can be read aloud, textbooks can be read aloud, and they have connections to their professors through their iPads. So there are colleges like Lynn and even Furman, who have great support systems in place. There are a couple of other schools that are known for it. The University of Arizona has the SALT program, SALT. You have to apply for it, but they're really well regarded. There's Dean College, Landmark College in Vermont, Endicott College. There are more. I mean, but I'm naming some, but honestly, even like my state universities in Florida, there's a program at UNF, there's a program at UWF. The Office of Student Services at UCF is also really great. Check out the colleges, ask them what they have, and talk to students who use it. And there are a lot of great things. Okay, back to physics. Oh, hold on. I think Lisa's telling me I'm talking too long. Okay, I know. Okay. You guys, I can't talk so much. I have to finish. Okay. Back to physics. My daughter is taking APUSH, AP Psych, AP Research, and dual enrollment English, and she chose to take Earth Science instead of physics for next year. She's looking at AP Environmental Science. I'm hearing that it may be better to take physics. Yes, it is better to take physics. AP Environmental Science, a lot of the students want to take because it's not biochem or physics, and they think it's going to be easier. It is a slog. There's a lot of reading. It's not necessarily easier, and take physics. It's my short answer. By the way, go Tigers. My son was born in Princeton. Yes, go Tigers. My daughter was direct admitted, to over 30 schools. She had to send her application, but was told she was automatically accepted there. Yes. So, okay. So Christina asked about direct admissions, and I wanted to make sure I was talking about the right thing with her. So this year, if you have a senior on the Common App, they might have been offered admission by schools without doing anything. It just showed up in their Common App where they say, hey, if you send us an application, like, we're going to admit you. First, couple points about direct admissions. It's not direct merit. She's saying her daughter was offered merit, and often you are going to be offered merit, but it's not guaranteed merit. So you do want to make sure that you know what the financial package is going to be. And she's asking, like, should we be concerned about these? Like, does this mean, I assume you mean, like, does this mean the colleges are in trouble? No, it does not mean the colleges are in trouble. It's not a problem that your child's being directly admitted to these colleges. Colleges are using, this is a new program that the Common App is offering, a new service that colleges can contract with the Common App to do. And I think that some of them are just experimenting with it. I'm on the board for like 5 different colleges, like advisory boards for 5 different colleges. And a couple of them have brought it up and been like, what do people think about this? Like, what are the optics of this? And is this a good thing to do? Usually it's private, expensive schools that, they need to fill seats at some point, and they also want to try and reach out to a wider audience than they might get otherwise. So it doesn't mean anything about the financial health or like the health of the university. I think SMU did it. SMU is doing just fine, but they're experimenting with it, seeing if it helps them bring in a more diverse group of students. They also can target those, and often they're targeted to certain regions of students, and they're looking for a certain socioeconomic diversity. So if your kids go to a public school, they're probably more likely to get those offers than, a private school. Okay. Physics, yes. Yes, I agree that direct admissions is awesome for boosting credit. I know. Lisa says I have to talk faster. Sorry. It's a big topic. My daughter's filling out her Common App and will apply to several schools, mostly state schools in our state and others. She plans to take a gap year next year. Does it hurt her if she states that on her application? Better to hold off on sharing that info and deferring once she is admitted, or better to be honest? Okay, so first of all, you don't want to not be honest and then have it be a big problem, because that's not really doing her any good. So she is definitely going to take a gap year. One thing I would check out, especially for state schools, a lot of state schools do not let you do gap years. They're going to make you reapply. So research that first. Like, does it even make sense to apply? Because if she's going to have to reapply, then reapply. The other thing is that usually the common wisdom is to apply to colleges, then tell them you want to take a gap year, which is fine. But I would check and see ahead of time, like, is this something that happens at the school often? Like, are they friendly towards gap years? Because if she knows she's going to be applying for a gap year, especially if she's applying to in-state public universities, like, just do your research and, don't have her do work that's not going to be productive. So yeah. But in general, colleges find gap years to be a good thing, and they get more mature students out of it. My student has applied to Michigan State University and it's their #1 school choice. I'm wondering if Michigan State is a demonstrated interest school, and it would be a good idea for my student to send an email to the admissions counselor expressing interest in the school. Michigan State is not a demonstrated interest kind of school, and the admissions counselors really don't want your children sending them emails for no other reason than to express interest in the school. The vast majority of colleges consider an application an expression of interest. So no, but Michigan State is definitely not a demonstrated interest school. My sophomore is at an IB school but doesn't want to do the whole diploma. He will take IB courses in some subjects as they are the most rigorous, but it's hard to know how he will do on the tests or if he will even take every test. Do colleges expect that students will have taken a test if they do an AP or IB course, and how it is viewed if they don't get a score? So at most universities, and there are some exceptions that include Georgetown and MIT and sometimes Yale, you don't have to report test scores like IB and AP scores, and it's not necessarily part of the evaluation. What do they think if you don't submit a test score and you took the class? They think nothing. They don't have time to think about it. They don't have time to wonder. They don't have time to assume, and they don't have time to figure it out because your kid could have been sick that day, and maybe he was sick on the makeup day. You don't know. They can't assume. So with the exception of Georgetown and MIT, I wouldn't worry about it. I would let him take the rigorous classes. That's much more important. Which subjects are counted under history and social studies? My student has taken interpersonal communications as a dual enrollment at the local community college instead of history this year. It's listed as a communications course. So that is an elective. It is not a social studies class, and it doesn't count as a social studies class. So I would say she should take like an actual social studies class next year, if possible, like a history class. That's a dual enrollment elective. It probably isn't even counted in a college admissions evaluation, to be honest with you. Hello from Maryland. Hello. For those kids interested in pre-med, what is a good major to look into besides biology and chemistry, and what AP classes are important besides AP Bio, AP Chem, AP Calc BC? So pre-meds can major in anything. So they can major in music, they can major in religion, they can major in art. They just have to take the prerequisite classes for medical school admissions, and they need to get really high grades in them. So one of the pieces of advice for pre-med students is to major in something that you can get really high grades in, period. And then look for ways to get clinical and research experience in college. And also probably at this point, plan on taking a gap year after your undergrad in preparation for applying to med school, because you're probably going to need more time to get clinical and research experience in that year off and to study for the MCAT and everything else. Sorry, my sweater is making my nose itch. AP Bio, AP Chem, and AP Calc BC are actually not really required for a pre-med. You're probably going to need to take those classes again in college. I'd say that they're great exposure for a pre-med student, so that maybe it will be easier for them to take in college, but you're not going to get out of anything by taking that. So yeah. Basically, if you're pre-med, you need to take the hardest classes you can and do really well in them. And then in college, you need to do really, really well. How hard is it to get into NC State grades and scores as a business major? We are out of state. NC State is fairly selective. I'd say their engineering is probably one of their most competitive, but they're selective, and out of state it's going to be even more selective. So do the best you can. Yeah. My son's school requires 2 separate English courses, literature and composition, in each year of high school. Their other required courses each year are math, science, social studies, and foreign language. They drop French. It's a very small school. How favorable. So again, Amanda, this is going to be colleges looking at your child's school in the context of their school. So if that's required every year, like, first of all, nobody thinks it's a bad idea to learn how to write. Everybody thinks that's a good idea. So that's great. Um, but they're also going to be looking at your child's school in context. So just remember that. My son's school requires oh, that's the same question. Okay. And then I wanted to answer. I know. Lisa, she just has to keep me in line. Yeah. That's all. And it's a good thing because she actually wants me to sleep, which is also good. How do you know what schools are demonstrated interest schools, or is that the next session? um, Many past sessions on demonstrated interest. And here's what I would say. In general, it's not going to be big state schools. It's going to be small private liberal arts schools. It's also usually like Ivies are not worried about you being interested in them. They know you're interested in them. The Ivies are the Blake Lively's of the world, for those of you who are deep into TikTok lore right now. They are the pretty girls at the prom. They're not worried about you being interested in them. They don't need you to demonstrate your interest. It's going to be schools that feel like maybe they might not be your first choice. They might be your second or third choice. You want to show them some love and make sure that you go to their like either tour or go to their online webinars or things like that. So yeah, so that's basically what I would say. Also, they're not looking for you to hit every box on the demonstrated interest. Like just opening their emails, honestly, is a big deal. And they're all very thirsty for kids to open their emails. So I would say, like, there's been a lot of hype about demonstrated interest. Don't lean into that. And please don't email admissions counselors unless you need to. They are so busy and so overwhelmed and so drowning. How do colleges view transcripts if high schools change their offerings during the course of a student's 4 years? Yeah. So okay. So everybody has a school profile, and you should ask to see your school profile. I find a lot of context on a school profile, and whenever I'm working with a student from a school that I've never worked with before, I go and look up their school profile and like look and see like what is communicated to colleges on the school profile. You'll see GPA distribution charts at some schools. You'll see their AP offerings or their IB offerings or their ACE offerings or the number of students who dual enroll. You'll see AP pass rates. You'll see average SAT scores for the school. Some of them go into great detail. Some of them are more general. Sometimes they'll say these are the highest classes in each department that a student can take. The more information they give colleges, the better. Sometimes you'd like them to give a little bit less because maybe it would tell them less about your kid than you want them to know. But the more information they have, the better. And the colleges really rely on those school profiles to understand the way that school works and the intricacies of that school. So everybody should go ask, like, what does your school profile look like? And I don't put my school profile that I write up for colleges on our school website because it's not really appropriate for like prospective families to look at. But I am so happy to offer it. Like if a parent asks me to see the school profile, I'm so happy to give it to them. And I send it out with every transcript, which is what every school does. We have to upload it to Common App. We have to upload it to Slate. Everything that a college looks at, we have to send it to them. Okay. So yeah. All right. I think I made it, right? Lisa, am I good? Did I hit everybody? I did it. Okay. All right. So you guys, this is a very hard topic to tackle. I told Lisa earlier, I was talking to college admissions officers tonight, and they were all like, they were doing some online panel and they were like, and I said, do you want to trade? And they were like, oh, no. I don't want to have to tackle that. So this is a tricky topic and it is so nuanced. I'm just going to reiterate one more time to you. Nothing I said is a blanket rule. You have to take your student into account, their individual circumstances, their individual schools, their mental health. I think any of you who have ever seen me talk before know that I say that comes first. Nothing else matters. If physics is going to be the end of their mental health, then by all means, like they can figure out the world without physics. what I would say is just remember that you're looking for, like, you're doing the best you can to build a good foundation, a good preparation, both for college, for life, not just to get into college. We're doing things because it's actually healthy for them, and I think it's a good thing. And again, I have a high school senior. Math is not his strong point. He's taking physics. He's doing fine. You can do it. I believe in all of you, but he's taking it because I knew he should take physics. Like some foundational knowledge of physics. He might never take it again in his whole life. He probably won't, but at least he knows something about, velocity and force and whatever else we learned in physics. Okay. So I hope that that helps. If you have outstanding questions, you can leave them in the group and I will be around tomorrow and I will try to answer questions if I see them in the group, and Lisa will tag me, I'm sure. And I hope that this was helpful. I'm also going to send Lisa a few links to videos that I send to people when they ask me about course selection that I think are helpful, and I'll have her post them in the group tomorrow too. So just as a follow-up. So everybody have a good night and a nice short week for most of us. And great. And I will see you next time. Thanks for coming.